What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Today we are super excited because we are one day from Survivor Season 32, Kaoh, Rong, Brains, Brawn, Beauty 2. Like, what the heck? This is so crazy. It is so close. We are both so excited for tomorrow. But today we figured we'd be doing a little special podcast because we recently were just mentioned in an article on Rob Has a Website. So the article is written by Sarah Freeman, and it is called The Young Lasses of Kaoh Rong. And we are so honored to be mentioned in this article as one of the female podcasters that you should watch for and check out. And we just want to say we love Rob Has a Podcast. Definitely Rob Susternino and Stephen Fishback and everyone there. We love watching their podcasts and reading the articles. So it's so amazing that we are featured in it. And so my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and in case any of you guys haven't read this article, it was about the gender bias in Survivor, and especially in this season of Survivor, because there are 9 women on this season, and only 2 of them are over the age of 30, which was really interesting. And the article goes on to discuss more how most of the females are younger, and how in Survivor, a lot of the super fans of the show aren't females, and how the Survivor community as a whole sort of fosters that, because a lot of the famous podcasters like Rob are males, and how a lot of people think that A, being female on Survivor is a little bit of a disadvantage, and B, how being especially an older female on Survivor is a disadvantage, because a lot of the younger females that we've seen use sex appeal or use some other form of communication to win the game rather than using their brains or their brawn, and mostly they end up using beauty.
Yeah, so I'll link the article down below after this podcast finishes so you can check it out. So if you're watching in real time, you can check it out after, or if you're not watching in live real time, you can go and check it out now. But yeah, we thought this article is really interesting. Like when we were just doing our cast assessment a few episodes ago, we said all the people's ages and we didn't even realize that only 2 of the females were over 30. So I think just the statistics in this article were so interesting, and it really brings to light this kind of, maybe it's not intentional issue, but it is an issue in a lot of TV that we do see today.
And we thought that we'd just like to start a larger conversation about gender bias in Survivor and gender bias in TV in general. And so many of you may have heard about this thing called the Bechdel test, and it's a way of testing whether or not movies are sexist. And basically what the Bechdel test is it sees if a movie has at least 2 female characters who are named, and if they talk to each other about something other than a man. So a lot of times what we see in television or in movies or in other kinds of media is that the girls in the story exist solely as a romantic interest for a man, or in other ways just as a support for a man character. So if you think of the movies that are popular, have been popular, especially today, they're all about a love story, and the female in the love story ends up normally being kind of the accessory to the man. So Twilight, Bella was obsessed with Edward, and pretty much everything she talked about was Edward. In the Hunger Games, even though Katniss is an amazing, strong female character, she still ends up in a love triangle between Peeta and Gale. Divergent, you have Triss, who's fallen in love with Four. The Fault in Our Stars with Hazel and Augustus, and basically a lot of women in media are portrayed as their romantic interest. And even though this doesn't happen as much in Survivor, obviously because it's reality TV, there are still issues with how women are portrayed as accessories to men.
Yeah, and like Alyssa did this Bechdel test for a project last year in world history class, and like I still remember it even though like it wasn't my project. So I think it's so prevalent. Like I'm a huge Dylan O'Brien fan, and in like the Maze Runner movies, obviously there is like it doesn't really the first one doesn't pass the Bechdel test because every single person and like in the book it's all males because that's how the maze is. It's all males. So there's like rarely any females cast. So just like those kind of things. And like Nemo doesn't pass the Bechdel test, like those kind of movies. So it's really crazy that like these kids movies don't have like female presence in them.
And that affects a lot of how like girls see themselves growing up. Like Rachel said, I did a project on this, so if you want to discuss the Bechdel test anymore, please leave a comment about it and I could talk with you for hours.
Yeah, and
Anyway,
if you want to discuss how Twilight is the best modern love story of all time. Oh no, I'm just kidding. But yes.
yeah. So
um so yeah, I guess moving on, like Alyssa mentioned earlier, like the article does mention how the ages of females in survivors. So only two are over the age of 30, which is Jennifer and Debbie. Jennifer is 38 and Debbie is 49. And so I thought that was interesting. Then another statistic from the article was that the men on Brains, Brawn, Beauty 2 are ranging from age 27 to 72, and only two are under the age of 30. And so Nick, at the age of 30, is the third youngest man on the season. He's older than Darnell and Caleb, who are the two men under age 30, and he's the third youngest man at age 30. But then Aubrey is age 29, and that makes her the third oldest woman. So that was like really interesting and sort of crazy, like to see how like the third oldest woman and the third youngest man are basically the same age, but it's like out of the 9 players, that means 6 are younger and 6 are older, which is like for the men and women, it's crazy on that, like that kind of level.
yeah, and I think part of it also is, like we said, men are generally more likely to be super fans of Survivor, and so they generally end up joining later in life after they've had like more experience with the show and stuff. And it also said that most of the females who are on the show have been recruited, whereas the males apply.
Yeah, like a lot of the females, at least like this season, are super fans. A lot of them do identify as like a fan of the show, and then yeah, even like some of the people are recruited, and then I was like comparing the ages for Brain Brawn Beauty 1, and then with this season, which is Brain Brawn Beauty 2, and then for the oldest person in the first Brains Brawn Beauty, the oldest person in the season is Trish, who is 48 years old. And then the three of the beauties, which are Jeffra, Morgan, and Alexis, are the three youngest girls on that season, and they're all 21 or 22. And then though Spencer on that season is 21, the next oldest males on that season are Garrett and Bryce at 27. So it's sort of interesting because all the males in the first Brain Brawn Beauty are like in their late 20s to late 30s. So they're like 27 to 40 years old. Like Tony was like 38, 39, and he won the season. So it is like all of the young girls get recruited because that is like they're pretty, they're athletic, and then but I don't know, we don't really see these young girls able to do the game as well as if they waited a few years and played the game.
Yeah, I think especially with the girls on Beauty, they were all kind of portrayed or perceived as like vapid narcissists because they were young girls who knew that they were beautiful. And I think that brings to light a larger problem about the double standard with beauty and self confidence and gender. But that's not really what we're talking about as much. But it's another thing that we can discuss in the comments if you guys are interested in talking about that. But basically, we're just kind of, I wouldn't say confused, but we're surprised by how different the ages are in Survivor players.
Yeah, and sort of like I guess like with the beauty kind of aspect, like to be like pretty, even though like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but like pretty for like the females on Survivor, it's like definitely, you know, skinny, you got that kind of bikini body. And then the males, it's sort of either like you're like really buff and fit, like, you know, like got the
Yeah.
muscles, or they're tall and lanky and like the nerdy kind. So that they've got like two ways to be hot. But like the girls, like if you're not like the skinny zero size, you're forced into wearing a one piece for the pictures. Like they don't let you wear the bikinis.
So that also brings to mind Sarah Friedman, who wrote the article that we started discussing in this video, also wrote an article about gender bias in San Juan del Sur, which was the a blood versus water season, and that also has some really great points because the Twinney sisters were not allowed to wear bikinis, even though they were probably the most physically fit like contestants as far as like muscle and ability to like do things with their body. And so that was another interesting thing. So if you read the article and you enjoy it, definitely read Sarah's article also about San Juan del Sur. So another thing that we talk about a lot, especially on the show, is famous females or famous players of Survivor. And one thing that we noticed is that a lot of times when people are asked, like, oh, name a famous Survivor female, it's Parvati Shallow. And, like, she's amazing. I love her. Like, love her. But when you think about, like, famous Survivor males, the scope is so much broader. Like, you have Richard Hatch, you have Rob Mariano, you have all these people. And then you really only have Parvati and Sandra as examples of like famous Survivor females. And while that's not bad, because like I said, they're both very amazing people, I think it says a lot about like what a woman has to do to be remembered on the show.
Yeah, like 4 people this season wrote on like the Survivor bios. Like 4 girls said that they thought the most related Survivor that they are is Parvati, and even some of the males said that they relate most to Parvati. Like they want to play the same kind of game as Parvati. And Parvati last played in season 20, so Heroes versus Villains. So that is like a long time ago, 12 seasons ago, and yet people are still like Parvati is the only female that they remember as like a great female. But there are so many like other amazing girls that did play the show, like Courtney or Sari or Amanda, and like you said, Cassandra, Kelly Wentworth, Denise won the show, like Kim Spradlin, she was freaking amazing on the show. Like how come like Survivor contestants aren't saying these females as who they're most related to? And like you're saying, like a lot of people love Boston Rob or Russell or Tyson are like a lot of the main ones. And even when like Alyssa and I, when we were doing our like, you know, best one-time players to play again, those kind of videos on the hiatus, we did mostly males. And then Alyssa pointed out like, yo, we need to change some of the males and make it even with male and female. So it's like even we as viewers of the show are making more males as like who we want to see again and that kind of thing. So that was really interesting.
And one thing I want to point out is that normally when people say they want to play the game like Parvati Shallow, they either like end up getting voted off really, really early, or they end up playing a game that's not at all like Parvati's. Because I feel like people misinterpret what it means to play the game like Parvati Shallow, and they think if I am a female playing this game, I have to play like Parvati to win just because she's one of the more notable female winners.
Yeah, like I don't know, everyone just says that they want to play like Parvati, but there are just, you know, like so many other great ones that you could say besides like the main Parvati, Boston Rob, Russell trio. So I don't know, should we move on to the next talking point that we have?
Yeah. So what we were thinking about is female storylines on Survivor. So we talk a lot about like the hero edit and stuff like that, where people are edited to look a certain way on television. And I think that this was actually kind of evident in Second Chances. because the main female storyline I feel like was Kelly Wentworth, and the whole time she was the underdog. And like it's very hard, I feel like, for a female on Survivor to get a winner's edit or a hero edit without like making her seem like a bad person.
Yeah, like I wrote down in my notes, like people, like females are not getting the winner's edit even though they win the game. Like in white collar, no collar, blue collar, Mike, he got like the crazy OG amazing I win the game ever since like the first episode, and then once like all the good people left and it was down to like Dan and Will left, obviously he's gonna win the game. There's no one good left in the game to win. And like even Natalie and Samoa, she was at the final 3 with Russell, Hans, and Mick. Nobody thought Natalie would have won because we didn't see, like, basically she got like 0 confessionals throughout the season. She killed a mouse. We didn't see anything that would have like let us as viewers think like she would win the game, because that season was so Russell centric. Even Natalie in Brawn or Blood versus Water 2 with Missy and Jacqueline at the end, like that season was so overpowered with the males like Reed and Josh and Jeremy and John Mish and even John Rocker. Like after all of them went, then you sort of started seeing the Natalie Anderson winner's edit come through. But like in the merge, right after the merge, it was like very Jeremy and Josh and Reed focus, like that kind of big dog thing. And then another winner's female is Sophie from the South Pacific. She sat with Coach and Albert, and sitting with Coach, it was his 3rd time playing. Sophie didn't really get that winner's edit either. So it's like the females seem to always be overshadowed even when they win the game.
One thing that Sarah mentioned in her San Juan del Sur article that I thought was really interesting is that when a man wins Survivor, you get the story of the man winning Survivor. And when you get a female winning Survivor, you get the story of how the man lost Survivor. Because when you think about it, Micronesia, the Black Widow Brigade, it wasn't about, oh, look at these girls who are so smart and strong. It's, look at these guys who are so stupid and giving up hidden immunity idols. And Heroes versus Villains, it wasn't, look at these girls who are so amazing and can control Russell Hantz. It's, look at Russell Hantz who is stupid enough to trust these 2 girls. And like you said, with Sophie and Natalie and all these other people who are female winners, they always end up being overshadowed by their male counterparts.
Yeah, so it's definitely sort of like a, I don't really know how to explain it. It's sort of like you can say it one way, but then it like flips around, and like the producers and like TV, they like do it the other way. So it's always like the males like fault for losing the game because they did something, instead of the females actually are smart and can win the game.
Yeah.
So it's like seems like it's sort of flipped, even though the females like actually can do stuff. So like going into the next point we have is like the women following the men kind of thing. So women rarely tend to like lead the alliance when there are the men around, because like with the older guys around, you're more drawn, I guess, sort of to like they're going to be the alpha males, they're going to dominate, they're going to lay the rules. Because if you're the woman trying to like go and try to like be the alpha male in the alliance and be the one setting the plans and like being the one doing the action and trying to lead, you're either seen as like the crazy mother figure and voted off because you're like too annoying and too like bossy about trying to get votes, or you're seen as the B word, insert that here, because you're being like bossy or whatever like they're thinking. And this is seen for like so many storylines that we're seeing, like Kimmy just in season 31 with Second Chance. Like, we didn't see anything from Kimmy throughout the season until the very end when she wanted to do that female alliance. So like Alyssa and I during our last season's podcast, we were like, Kimmy is such a goat because she's not doing anything. But then when she actually got that screen time, like she was actually thinking the whole time, and she actually had a good storyline. So like if we were able to see that she wasn't just the goat to Jeremy or Steven, like she could have had a bigger like impact. And like, I don't know, you can comment on that.
Yeah, so I don't think there's really much more to say about the women following the men other than that if you look back on what has happened, you you can really see that. And I think also part of it is in season 20 in Heroes versus Villains, you see the incidents where someone assumes that just because the men are all being voted out, that it's an all-female alliance, not that there is an alliance that includes a man, and the man just isn't taking control. Because, like, JT gives Russell an idol because he thinks that the girls are being mean and voting all the men out, but really it's Russell is going along with it because he doesn't particularly care. So,
Yeah, like Monica in Blood versus Water 1, you know, she made the final 3 with Tyson and Jervis. And like just from like sort of seeing that episode and seeing like the Sierra rock draw and everything, like one would think that, you know, Monica's just being goaded around by Tyson and Jervis to go to the end. But then in a lot of Monica's confessional, she's like so proud, you know, like I'm here for me. I'm no longer like my husband's wife. I'm me. I'm Monica. I'm like a strong female. So you can really see that in her confessionals. But like with Tyson and Jervis, everyone would just see like that Monica's being goaded by them to the final 3. Like Monica could have flipped with Sierra and Hayden, but she decided to go with Tyson and Jervis and them. So I don't know. And then like in Carolyn for blue collar, white collar, no collar, like she didn't really get any kind of, she sort of had a good edit, but when she was in the final like 3 with Mike, she would not win because Mike got the super OG amazing edit. And like Wigglesworth in last season didn't get any screen time, barely any screen time after the premiere, and she's like one of the other golden girls of Survivor. And like even when trying to do like female alliances like with the witches, everyone is like, we need to get these girls out because
they're called witches. Like,
exactly, like we need to get these girls out because they're thinking. And it's like yeah.
So another thing that we wanted to talk about, we have a lot of talking points. Just we probably should have mentioned that earlier, but we're going to be jumping from topic to topic quite a bit. But is we often see that females in Survivor are like shoved into a role. Kind of how we talked about the edits, about how females don't normally get a good edit. We normally don't see females who are like typecast in a positive way. Like you see Rupert from his seasons, and he's typecast, but he's typecast as like the gentle giant or the lovable hero, and they all end up being positive. But the females who are typecast as like the maternal figure or the pushover or the B word. And I was talking to Rachel about this, but I think that one really profound example of this is that in Heroes versus Villains, there were 4 returning players who were winners of the game. 2 of those returning players were male and 2 of them were female. Both of the female winners were put on the villains, and both of the male winners were put on the heroes. In case you don't know who I'm talking about, JT and Tom were the heroes, Sandra and Parvati were the villains. And like, I think that it can be argued a lot of ways, like, oh, they just happen to be that way. But I think the fact that a woman who wins the game is automatically a villain, whereas a male who wins the game is automatically a hero, says a lot about how Survivor producers see the castaways and also how, like, the fans see the castaways.
Yeah, can we like name some Survivor male villains that like aren't on Heroes versus Villains, just like in general that are like villainous? Like maybe Tony might be considered a villain, but like I think he played a pretty good game and like that was sort of like his game and it might just be like the edit that didn't make him seem like a total crazy villain. But then like on the other hand, like Cass or like Abby are like personified as like the villainess. Like there are so many like female villains that you can name like as a villain, or you can say like there are not that many males you can categorize as a villain. They might just be like mean, but you wouldn't say like sort of like a villain, you know?
Yeah, and what you said, where like females who are like crazy or strong-willed are seen as like villains. Males who do the same thing, I feel like, are almost seen as heroes because like they push for what they want, so they're being brave and chivalrous and heroic. And I don't know. I think it's
Yeah,
another one of those like double standard type things.
yeah, and also with like type specific typecasting, like I don't know, just like sort of not really less so in Survivor, but in other shows you see like every season there are like specific kind of people. Like there's always like the brains, you know, there's always like the supermodel or the one who like used to model or was like an NFL cheerleader or something of that sort. You know, there's always someone that is like the older figure. There's always someone that's like sort of like weird or something. So like there's always like those kind of peoples in the show, and this is definitely prevalent like on The Amazing Race. Like every single season on The Amazing Race there is like a group, mainly mostly all girls, like definitely the group of girls that are like always that are like the NFL cheerleaders or like the really pretty ones or models or something, and then there's always like the group of like hot guys that I don't know are just good looking,
They're
like
there for eye candy, pretty much.
yeah, so there's always like those like specific people every single time, and it's so bad that like you can always like point out like the token Asian, the token black person, the token gay people. Like why do they have to have just one, you know? Why can't you have more? And even in Survivor, like there's rarely any people like of like other colors in the show, and like just like Cook Islands had a lot, but that was sort of controversial with the way they did that. But that is like the only season that did have good representation from not just one group of people.
So what you said about how there's very rarely people of other colors in the episode where they had the rocks of two colors, either the black rock or the white rock, and they needed a certain amount of white rocks to fix their shelter. Shireen tweeted from home after Jeff
Yes.
said we need 5 whites. She was like, "Well, this is Survivor, so you shouldn't really be having a hard time with that, because like pretty much the majority of the people are white." Um, I think that this season, as far as diversity goes, is actually pretty good because you have Sydney and Darnell and Ty, who are all people of color, and and yeah, it's just like we understand that you can't have everyone be a strong female who's also a person of color, but I think that Survivor is sort of feeding into the internalized racism that we see in our society, and there's like a racial bias and a gender bias. So,
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely see those. And sort of like I don't know. People have been saying like since this season, season 32 hasn't been like as hype, or like since Jeff Probst isn't like hyping it up or tweeting about it, people are saying it's because a female player wins the season that Jeff isn't like hyping it up, which is just like I don't know, like even though if a female player does win the season, why aren't you hyping it up like at any other season? Like what does it matter that a female is winning the season over a male winning the season? Like don't you want people to watch the show for ratings?
I mean, part of this is also what you said about like it's not a good season because a female wins. From what I've seen, like I've been looking a lot lately at like rankings of the Survivor seasons, like which season was the best, and overwhelmingly, I see two different seasons rated as the top one, and that's either Borneo, because out of the virtue of the fact that it was the first season ever of Survivor, or Survivor Micronesia. And you can argue that Micronesia is perhaps one of the most interesting seasons of Survivor because of the Black Widow Brigade and because of all that happened to make that a reality.
Yeah, and even them voting out like James and
James wasn't voted out, he was medevac.
okay, Medevac. Who was the other one that was on there?
Eric?
That was Amanda's like love interest.
Oh, Ozzy.
Yeah, Ozzy, yeah. Like just voting out like those two huge players, like they're like fan favorites also. So I think that makes it a pretty good season.
And just as a disclaimer here, obviously we aren't girls, so we have a different view of this than a lot of you might have, because Rachel was looking at our viewer demographic on YouTube, and you said how many? 60% was male?
Yeah, it was like 65% male, 35% female.
So a lot of you that are watching this might not understand where we're coming from because you're not female. So yeah, but basically what we want to bring to attention is that Survivor does have gender bias, just because we feel like the first step towards improving that gender bias is getting people to realize that. And we're not trying to imply in any way that we dislike Survivor because of this, or that we dislike anyone who is gender biased, but we do want it to be more egalitarian, or at least as much as it can be. So
yeah, like some TV shows that are like really good with like having like diverse casts. I think like Teen Wolf, but everyone like always like makes fun of me because I really like Teen Wolf for some reason. But I think like that has a really good diverse cast. Like they have so many different kinds of people on there. They have like interracial dating on there, which is another topic, but like that it's just got like so many like different kinds, and there's not like the token this kind of person, but there's like multiple of those kind of people. So it's not just like one person filling the prototype, so check, we got our diversity off, but it's like they have like multiple of like those kinds of things.
And like we said in the beginning, this is just intended to start a conversation. So please, please, please comment, especially if you don't understand or you don't agree with anything that we've said, just because we do want to see where you're coming from and share our opinion with you. And we understand that this is kind of a very charged topic, just because people are always talking about racism and sexism nowadays, especially with everything that's been going on. So,
but yeah, so we
going to be making a video based on tomorrow's episode of Survivor. Get hyped, and we'll probably be posting that on Friday.
Yeah, we want to thank Sarah Freeman again for writing this article and for including us in it, which was such an honor. It's amazing that we are included in it, and like thank you so much, and like just thank everyone for watching, and we are super excited for tomorrow. Like I can't.
Yeah, so we will see you guys all on Friday when we podcast based on tomorrow's episode of Survivor, and we love you all, so we'll see you then.
Goodbye.